one of these books is the good twin, and one of these books is the evil twin, and I am going to find out which. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is, and has been for a long time, one of my absolute favorite books. I believe it contains incredibly important and profound ideas about technology, about science, and about philosophy and the philosophy of value. Now, the odd thing is that other Joseph does not share my opinion. He does not like Zam at all. Oh, he appreciates a few parts, he thinks a few ideas are interesting, but what he's told me again and again is, I smell a philosophic rat. Now, what's kind of odd is that there's another book called Shop Class as Soulcraft that other Joseph really does like. And that book and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance are oddly, eerily, bizarrely similar. So first of all, motorcycles feature heavily in both. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is about a guy who enjoys maintaining his motorcycle, and he goes on a motorcycle trip across the country. Shop Class as Soulcraft has a motorcycle on the cover, and the author is a motorcycle mechanic. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is subtitled An Inquiry into Value, and Shop Class as Soulcraft is subtitled An Inquiry into the Value of Work. Even the title, Shop Class as Soulcraft, is practically a paraphrase from a sentence from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance about how the real motorcycle you're working on is a motorcycle called yourself, and that the motorcycle that appears to be out there and the self that appears to be in here actually grow towards quality or fall away from quality together. In other words, Shop Class is Soulcraft. A little while ago, I picked up a copy of Shop Class as Soulcraft on Audible and started listening to it. And what's crazy is, after one chapter, I had the exact same reaction to Shop Class as Soulcraft that other Joseph has to Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. That is, I smell a philosophic rat. It raises my hackles. There's something wrong with it, and I don't know what, but I want to find out. So, other Joseph and I are going to do something. He is going to reread Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and I am going to read for the first time Shop Class as Soulcraft. And we're going to vlog our experiences and reactions. And then at the end, we're going to have a special podcast episode where we get the two into a cage together and have them have an intellectual fight to the death. Spoiler alert, Zam's going to win because of course it's going to win. So that's the plan. I'm not sure what I'm going to find, and I'm not sure what he's going to find, but it's going to be pretty exciting to find out. So with that, let's start the vlogging. Okay, so thoughts about the introduction, and before I go any further, I need to say these are all going to be surface impressions, and I reserve the right to disagree with myself in the future if I change my mind. But here we go, the surface impressions. So the very first thing that strikes me is that they're written in wildly different styles. So Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is half narrative and half philosophic exposition. It follows the story of a man taking a motorcycle trip across the country with his son. And so it has this kind of meditative, reflective, gradual feel to it. To me, it comes at me like a symphony. It rises, it sinks, it ebbs, it flows. It has this progression, this complex structure, and nothing is ever what it first appears to be. By contrast, SCASC, Shop Class as Soulcraft, is coming at me like a freight train. It feels like somebody who's delivering jab after jab after jab, lightning fast, one after the other. There's not a coherent narrative across it. There's individual small stories, but they seem to be mostly there just to illustrate the points. There's no sort of independent literary value assigned to the story by the author. My impression of SCASC so far is that it's much more straightforward, much more pragmatic, and much less interested in sort of building those nets of complexity that Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance does. Now, am I saying that's a bad thing? I don't think I am. I think I'm just noticing it and saying, that's an interesting thing, and we'll figure out what it means later. Chapter 2 is kind of baffling to me. What I was sort of expecting was philosophy. I was expecting some really sort of deep inquiry and deep arguments. And I don't mean to say that SCASC isn't deep. I haven't read enough of it to say for sure. But what does strike me is that as far as I can tell, Chapter 1 is basically just saying manual labor is good. And although I think that that's true, I was expecting something that I would immediately recognize as sort of being deeper. I mean, he seems to be saying that manual labor, like repairing a motorcycle or doing electrician's work, is psychically satisfying and that it's intellectually involving. In other words, that it's not stupid person's work, which I totally agree with. It's obviously not. And then he's also saying that the future economy is going to involve a lot more manual labor than we think it is. And I think that that's probably correct. What I can't figure out is why this is so important to him. To me, that seems kind of like self-evident. And so I kind of like, I agree with him, but I can't tell why he's saying this. I can't tell like what his boogeyman is, what his sort of intellectual opponent is, who he's trying to array these arguments against. I mean, he's kind of arraying these arguments, it seems like, against all the people who are saying, look, you need a college education, you need a white-collar education, you know, don't get into the trades are yucky. And as far as that goes, I agree, but like I said, I was kind of expecting something that I would sense as more profound. So we'll see what happens. I just finished chapter 3, and I think I figured out who his boogeyman is, and it's really interesting. So what he describes in chapter 3 is how during the 20th century in the United States and broadly in the industrialized world, there became a division between thinkers and doers, a division between intellectual work and practical work, a division between white-collar smart people work and blue-collar dumb people work. And I hope it's obvious that I don't agree with that division. I'm just stating what that division is perceived as sometimes. So you see this, for example, in industrial processes like Henry Ford, right? Where the person on the assembly line doesn't have to do the thinking. The manager does the thinking. The manager sets up the system. The manager arranges how things are going to be. And then what the worker does is basically execute a series of commands. There's no sort of reciprocal thinking process. There's no need to sort of like look at the situation with fresh eyes and come to your own conclusions, because the problems are already defined and the solutions are already defined, so just apply the solution to the problem and you're done. And as far as that goes, I agree with him, but what I can't quite understand yet is why he's so antipathetic, as far as I can tell, towards white-collar work, towards sort of like intellectual person work. When I was doing my undergraduate degree in economics, I participated in a group called the Utah Community Research Group, and basically it does sort of business intelligence and data analytics for different groups in Utah. The professor who ran the Utah Community Research Group would tell us how every year he would go and find clients, and the clients would say, oh, you know, like it's a bunch of undergrads, you know, like let's pat them on the heads and see what they can do. You know, they're sort of going to be the monkey intern who just runs around and grabs coffee for people and runs off copies of things, right? Not actually very useful or helpful. And then by the end of the year, after these clients had seen the work that these undergraduate students had performed with data analytics and business intelligence, that there would be literal tears in their eyes because of the incredible value that these undergraduate students were delivering to the clients. And this is all white-collar intellectual work. This is all number crunching. This is all just shuffling Excel spreadsheets in our statistical programming language and stuff like that. So, although I definitely don't disagree with what the author of SCASC seems to be saying about blue-collar work, that it's actually very intellectually involving, that it's smart person work, and that it's valuable, I agree with that. But to the point where he goes and says, look, white-collar work is sort of disconnected from the real world and there's no practical value, the knowledge economy is too disconnected from everything to be useful, I'm like, no. Nope, that's a bridge too far. And if that's where he's taking the train, well, I'm gonna get off at this station. Okay, so I just read chapter 6, The Contradictions of the Cubicle. And I'm disappointed and I'm angry. I am steamed. I'm not happy with this. So chapter 6 is basically this anti-white collar work screed. He goes through all the caricatures of office work. He goes through all the caricatures of white collar work, right? Like Dilbert, the cartoon strip Dilbert and things like that. And says, you know, the thing about white collar work, the thing about intellectual work, the thing about knowledge work is that it's just too reliant upon emotions, and it's too fluffy, and it's too vague, and it's not clear whether you're doing anything right, and your boss is passive aggressive, and so on and so forth. And I just think that this kind of like anti-white collar screed is just absolutely inexcusable. And I don't think it's inexcusable because it's wrong. There's plenty of things to complain about corporate America. There's plenty of things to complain about regarding office jobs. There's plenty of things to complain about regarding the inauthenticity of that kind of work, or the petty bureaucracy that all kinds of what he would call knowledge workers confront in their offices on a day-to-day basis. All of that is a very fair complaint, but the idea that somehow you should throw out white-collar work, that you should throw out business, that you should throw out office work, that's just... It's so unforgivably absurd that I can't even think rationally about it. It's so colossally asinine that I can't even... I don't even know what to say. Like, does he really think that the world would be better off if we got rid of all the office buildings? Does he really think that the world would be better off if we moved back to a pre-industrial economy? Like, what is he even trying to say here? And then he also seems to think that you know, if we just all went and did, if we all went and did trade work, then magically we would all be better people. And magically the world would be a better place. And I'm like, look, buddy, okay, I understand you had a bad experience in white collar work, and I understand you had a much better experience as a motorcycle mechanic. But I've done both too. I've done very intellectual work. I've taught university courses. I've also done very blue collar work. I worked at a cherry processing plant. I spent years and years doing property maintenance. And let me tell you, like, you can do blue collar work, you can do trade work in an incredibly low quality way. It can be incredibly boring. It can be incredibly dehumanizing. It can be incredibly tedious. Like, I want to be careful here. I might be misinterpreting him. But if he's saying here that blue collar work is just like filled with magic fairy dust, like, I don't know what to tell him. And if he thinks that white collar work is just somehow intrinsically morally flawed, like, he's living on such a different planet that I don't even know where to begin. What's even worse is that he seems to be saying that part of the problem with office work is how vague the conditions of success are. And I want to say, look, buddy, not only is this a stupid thing to say, but it's especially stupid coming from someone in a background in academia. The nature of exploring new situations is you don't know yet what you're aiming for. And so it's difficult to establish criteria for success. You can't establish criteria for success for some kind of enterprise that you haven't even defined or tried yet. You know, if you want to send people to Mars, it's like, okay, we don't know how to send people to Mars, and so we might end up aiming at the wrong things for a while, and we might encounter new problems along the way. This is going to be complex, this is going to be vague, and every time we define it, we're going to have to redefine it again and again and again. That's just what it means to explore new situations, and so this idea that somehow, oh, white collar work is vague, I'm like, okay, buddy, like, have you never done any complex problem solving? Like, have you never explored a new situation? Like, what the heck were you doing in your PhD program? What on earth were you even doing? And can academia be filled with fluff? Absolutely, academia could be filled with fluff. When I was doing my Master's of Arts program, sometimes I wanted to slap people because they were so full of fluff. But to just reject the whole thing entirely and to say, okay, because people approach academic work or white-collar work in a fluffy way means that we should just stop doing white-collar work, is just such an incredibly stupid statement that I don't even know where to begin. It's like saying that because a baby poops their diaper, you should just throw out the whole baby with the diaper. No, this is why we invented diapers, is so that we can separate out stinky diaper from baby and keep the good thing and get rid of the bad thing. So this idea that we can just like universally condemn white collar work because a lot of people do it wrong, or even because most people do it wrong, is just it is a hopelessly obtuse position. It is hopelessly obtuse, and it's just thoroughly off-putting. It's just thoroughly off-putting. Okay, I finished the book, and the last couple chapters were kind of painful, even though I agreed with him. So I'm going to sum them up real briefly and then give my overall thoughts on the book, mostly derived from his concluding remarks. So the last two chapters of the book are basically about how knowledge is not only abstract and intellectual, it's also embodied and concrete inside of a situation. So basically he's saying, like, the general rules, the general principles that you get, that kind of instructions are nice, but there's also knowledge that is only applicable to that specific problem. And so necessarily the kind of knowledge that you need to solve problems is going to be local, it's going to be specific, it's going to be idiosyncratic, it's going to be between you and the problem. It's not something you're going to be able to read in a book, it's not something you're going to be able to receive in instructions from some top-down authority. And I absolutely agree with that. He also got around to answering one of the questions that I've been asking this whole book, which is, and here's how he puts it, do the arguments I have made about meaningful work necessarily point to the trades? That's what I've been wondering. Is this a universal condemnation of all white-collar work? And what he says is, basically, yes. He says, as the subsequent history of banking illustrates, any job that can be scaled up, depersonalized, and made to answer to forces remote from the scene of work is vulnerable to degradation, even to the point of requiring that the person who does the job actively suppress his better judgment. So basically he says, anytime you get any kind of a job that is scaled up, depersonalized, and makes you answer to forces that are far away, then you're in trouble. And that seems to, at least as far as I can tell, pretty much preclude almost all of the white-collar jobs that we do today. So I'm glad he's answered that question. I don't think it's an acceptable answer. If he's going to say that, then I think that he also needs to either explain to me how he's going to build airplanes without a globalized economy, and he needs to explain to me how I'm going to eat pineapple without a globalized economy, or else he has to tell me that I shouldn't eat pineapple and shouldn't fly on airplanes, which is fair enough, but I just think he ought to take one of those two positions and let me know what he thinks, because in my mind, if you're going to universally condemn anything that is not a trade, anything that is not local to your situation, well, you've got a lot of explaining to do about how the world's going to work after that. But he did answer the question, so points for that. I also really like his final advice, which is quite similar to the prescriptive advice that Pirsig gives in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And basically the idea is that, you know, he's engaged in this giant screed against the way we live, and so the question is, well, should you revolutionize everything, or what's the proper way to implement his philosophy? And what he says is this: it seems best to conclude by registering a note of sobriety as against hopes for transformation. If cultural despair rests on a view of history as being more powerful than individuals, the revolutionary, for his part, entertains an exaggerated fantasy of world changing. A heady vision of a progressive hereafter, in which economic antagonism has been overcome, may come to stand in for and distract him from the smaller but harder work of living well in this life. The alternative to revolution, which I want to call Stoic, is resolutely this worldly. It insists on the permanent local viability of what is best in human beings. In practice, this means seeking out the cracks where individual agency and the love of knowledge can be realized today in one's own life. Basically, he's saying revolutionizing everything right now might not be such a hot idea. Instead, what you should focus on is doing what you can where you stand right now in order to recognize places where individual agency and the love of knowledge can operate in your life. He's saying you should look for opportunities to take more responsibility and more agency in your own situation, whatever that is, presumably even if it includes white-collar work. And I fundamentally agree with that. So what's my overall review of the book? Well, there's a lot in here that I agree with, and there's a lot in here that I think is insightful. And I think that a lot of people could read this book and get a lot of good out of it. That said, I'm colossally off-put by two features. The first one, which is what totally steamed me earlier, is that he doesn't seem to have any respect at all for white-collar work, and he doesn't seem to have any idea at all about the dark side of blue-collar work. He seems to think that white-collar work is irredeemably bad, and that blue-collar work is, without exception, good. And I think that's just I think it's just totally idiotic. The second thing that bothers me deeply about the book is the fact that it still seems to cling to a subject-object metaphysics. That may seem like a very sort of abstruse and abstract concern, and I can understand that. If you've read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I think you'll understand a little bit better what I'm saying. Fundamentally, I think you could say that he doesn't really appreciate the Zen of motorcycle maintenance. Again, I recognize that may sound really abstract and really mystical, but it's partially that strain of mysticism that I love so much about Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. When I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I have the sense that I'm accessing some kind of deeper reality. I have the sense of real insight. Whereas, to me, SCASC came across as almost banal, even when it was correct. If you've read either of these books, I would love to hear your questions in the comments below. I want to know what you see in SCASC, why you think it's good or why you think it's bad. I'm a big believer that even though I am not a fan of SCASC at all, that there's still some redeeming value in there, at least for some people, and maybe you're one of those people. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. You can also look forward to the special podcast episode where we will try to hash out some of these issues and hopefully come to some better understanding of technology and Zen and motorcycles and souls and shopcraft. Also, I want to put in a quick plug for Audible. I listened to SCASC on Audible. You can also find Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance on Audible. If you go to audibletrial.com/goodandbasic, then you can sign up for a free 1-month trial. You could get one of these books for free. And if you want to cancel your trial after that, you can, or you can keep on going. So with that, I'm looking forward to a good discussion, and I'll see you all next time.